You install the latest game on your phone, and next thing you know, your money is gone. Is this fact or fiction? Well, let's find out. My name is Louis Jan Koning, and from the Security Operations Center floor here at OnToIt, we bring you ThreatTalks, the deep dive. And the subject of the day is the Vultur Android malware. Let's get on to it. Welcome to ThreatTalks. Let's delve deep into the dynamic world of cybersecurity. Let me start by introducing our two guests of today. On my right-hand side, it's Rob Maas. He is the field CTO of OnToIt, and his job is to prevent these things from happening. And on my left side, it's Luca Cipriano, and he knows exactly how you would perform such an attack as this. So let's find out. Luca, what happened here? We have a few clues in the title. It's the Android
malware. First of all, I would like to track back to your introduction. You mentioned you install your new game application and all your money are gone. That can be expected behavior if you install slot machine games or casino games. That can happen.
That happens to you, I know. But
well, Rob knows it. It was with me in the casino.
No, what I mean is something unexpected, right?
Yes.
I mean, something that you did. I was told by you, actually, this is called a dropper.
This malware specifically, no. The malware itself, Vultur, is like a banking Trojan, we could call it, but it comes into your phone via a dropper, at least this newest version that came out. So what is a dropper? Well, that's the question. So what can happen is that on the Play Store, for example, attacker will create an application, like, for example, simple application like a QR code scanner, which works as a QR code scanner, but it also has malicious function, which makes it a dropper. So it can talk back with the C2 server and install additional payloads or additional malware. So this thing can...
So it could be anything. It's not like, hey, we have this new version of your personal bank app. Please install, upgrade now.
It could be, you could be phished into doing that.
It's simpler than that. It's just you need to make something cool.
You also need to get somebody, like, for example, in this case, if you get phished into it, you need to get somebody that will install an app for the Android phone, not from the Play Store, from somewhere else. And unfortunately, there are people that do that, or at least, I know a couple. And I had last week, a friend of mine, she's not really well versed with technology, that she asked me to take a look at her phone because suddenly she had like 13 malware on her phone. And when she brought me the phone and I was looking at it, of course, she got McAfee notifications that she had malwares on her phone, but they were just that, when you go to some website, you can accidentally click on allow to give notifications. And she went to some weird website probably, and she got this notification from Chrome. But that's the phishing part. So you say, oh my God, McAfee says that I have 13 malware, so let me click and open it. And then you get phished into installing this version of McAfee, which works similar functionalities, but it can be a dropper. So it
can be many different ways that people get lured into installing something on their machine.
And
you mentioned Play Store, Rob. We were talking about private people here, customers of banks. Yeah. So they are not usually part of a governmental or an enterprise security system. First thing, the Play Store, is that a safe place? For example, if it's on there, is it properly done?
Well, I think,
or in general,
in general, I think whether it's the Play Store or the iOS Store, it's always good to make sure you trust the publisher. You know what you're installing. That's always a good starting point. I think, to be honest, at the Play Store, there's a little bit less checking on applications that are being uploaded. But what you definitely not should do, or make sure you absolutely know what you're doing, if you use third-party Play Stores or App Stores nowadays. So be very careful what you install, know what you install.
Yeah, because also the Apple platform is also open now.
Nowadays, nowadays you can also
they were forced to by the European Commission.
Yeah, so you have also third-party stores for your iPhone. If you still want to do that, then maybe you should consider having two phones, one for your sensitive applications like banking software, and then another telephone for your games or entertainment applications.
Yeah, what they did now, at least on the Play Store, I think they call it Google Play Protect or something like that. There's I think it's You can trigger it yourself, just going there, and it will scan all the applications that are installed in your phone and, well, check if there's something malicious. But I think it runs also every now and then automatically. But of course, like sneaking in 2 lines of code, it's always like, especially if it's a dropper, for example, like that's not really a malware. You just need a function to have a callback to the C2 server that will download the payload.
It doesn't look like malware at all.
No, I mean they're not.
So it's hard from the perspective of the owner of the store,
or the application that checks, in this case, play protect. Yeah. It's hard to determine.
So explain to us why is this so important? I mean, you have what's the power of an app store then? Because
what do you mean?
Well, apparently, by simply installing an app, that harm can be done without you even knowing. So, why is so much power invested in a app store?
Because of course you can have this, for example, dropper, right, that you download on your phone, which comes from the app store, or as we said, you get fished into downloading from somewhere else. But this. This application will be able also to know the other applications that get open, so to monitor what other application you access and you have on your phone. And as soon as it finds the application that it's deemed interesting, in this case, like the banking app, for example, it will trigger a callback to the C2 server and download the correct payload, for example, that you need to exploit that specific application, or in this case, it will download, for example, this Vultur malware.
Yeah, so it's a very powerful system, the App Store. It can install anything, so you need to be very careful who you allow to play around in your apps. I mean, it has more power than you as a user on your phone. Right?
But it's always you that download. You are the one downloading the app, and but the malicious payload is not hosted on the.
Look among your friends and family. I mean, this game.
For example, just as Rob mentioned, also always be aware of the software that you're installing. Sometimes I don't install any more games. You know, you have like this commercial on YouTube, and you see these super cool games, and then you can click and it says install. And now it is. I'm like, I read a lot of application aware on the app store.
My dropper software then.
Yeah, well.
could it also be an update of an existing app? So there's a legitimate app which is properly done. If you scan it,
well, I guess this
is... And then an update, the 2.0 version is released, and that one contains the dropper. That would also be possible.
Well, I mean, we always... we all know we did an episode also about supply chain attacks, and like a lot of times you have a Git repository with good code as well, and maybe somebody managed to sneak some malicious code. So that's something that can happen always.
Something we already have seen with some...
it happens.
Yeah, with some applications that you just install, and then you update the software, and then it has some features that you actually don't want, like a VPN or sniffing all your DNS traffic. So
an app store is a potential dangerous thing, but you can't live without it. It has a lot of power, so be careful. It's difficult. Yeah, okay. So then what happened? So this dropper installed.
It established the communication back to the C2 server, and in this case for the Vultur, it will download the crypt and install payload in the first two. I think it's in APK, and the third one is in the DEX or something like that. But it will install 3 parts of a payload that do 3 different things on your phone. This is done also to make reverse engineering of what happened a bit more complex, because you need to stick together these 3 parts that you have to really understand what happened. So the first payload, what it does, it actually gives to the attacker accessibility service privileges. Accessibility, for people that don't know what it is, it's for example, people that have that are impaired, like visually impaired or deaf, and it will give other way to interact with your phone in a different way. And as you can,
so you need a lower level of access instead of just different standard APIs. Draw a line.
Exactly.
It's less dangerous. Then root access to do everything, to directly talk to the screen. Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
Exactly. So then that's the first part. And then the attacker has these privileges, and it will call the second payload. And the second payload will install ngrok and alpha VNC. So ngrok... you know ngrok really well, right?
It's a nice tool to play with.
Yes. So what ngrok does, it will normally for a developer, it's used by developers, and it is to connect the developer to the local host on the machine, but without having to connect to the machine. So Ngrok will establish the connection to the server, and then the developer through the server then can get to
so it's a debugging tool if you're debugging your app.
It's for developers. You can debug your app. You can.
But it is legitimate software.
It is a legitimate software. Yes.
So if you accidentally leave it on, you can also debug your actual users. Nice.
Yes, and the same thing is for Alpha VNC, which is a remote admin tool. So it's a legitimate tool that is used for remote admin.
It looks like a bit like remote desktop.
Yeah,
like a controlling Zoom or Teams session on the phone of the victim without them knowing.
And now that the attacker has the C2 connection, it's more versatile. It has different ways to interact with your phone, of course. So it makes it more flexible on what they need to do. And the last part is the third part of the payload. And the third part of the payloads, invokes different functionalities, and it implements also a different C2 method by installing FCM, which is Firebase Cloud Management, and it is a messaging system that is used normally from developers to send messages inter-platform. And as you can imagine, this is it gives even more flexibility to the attacker because it does not really necessarily need anymore a C2 channel open, because it can just send messages to have the phone.
So even if the C2 channel was broken, they established a secondary channel
with a message bus system. Yeah, so you can send a message,
which is very common in systems, that they send messages back and forth to the server.
Yeah,
so it's
exactly. So
if you were lost to track of all this, well, we do have a infographic for you to download. So pause the video, download it now at threat-talks.com. It's also in the show notes, and then follow along.
Yeah, so at this point, the attacker has everything set up, and the functionalities of this new version of Vultur, it's that the attacker can download, upload, delete, and install files on your system. It can control the device accessibility service, because of course you have accessibility, as I mentioned before, privileges. So you can use the swipe gestures, scroll, click, mute the phone, everything. You can interact with everything on the phone. But the bad thing
to you,
yes, is that it can also prevent app from running, and the attacker can download from its C2 server HTML code that will display whatever he wants. So when you open your app, he can decide what you're going to see.
So you put a facade in front of the actual app then?
Yes.
I see where this is going. But Rob, so this sounds like a lot of malicious activity. I mean, in endpoints, we are used to EDR systems. We have had antivirus for a long time. It isn't really all that common in mobile phones, or is that changing?
It is changing slowly, but it is changing. So first of all, like we said, be careful with installing these apps, because countermeasures are hard to implement at the moment. But we can do something. So if you want, as an end user, you can install an EDR or antivirus solution on your phone. There are some tools out there that you can purchase and then install.
Yeah, watch out where you download them from.
I want to point it out, so be careful to install the right one. But
how would you know? I mean,
make sure to trust the publisher. Go only to the websites with the trusted certificates. So really be careful where you access your software and where you get it from. Don't just
or ask someone who knows. Maybe ask your bank.
Also an option. Yeah.
But is this available to all phones? Apple is much more closed ecosystem,
Apple
for example.
Has now, EDR solutions available for them, but that's more from an enterprise level at the moment. But it's something we see slowly changing. We see the need for it, like this malware is out there. So companies also can install it if it is a company-owned device. But even then, a lot of companies don't do that at the moment.
But doesn't it also drain your battery?
Yeah, so there are draining of battery, privileges. Most phones are used for company applications, but also for your own applications. And then it's becoming a very thin line what you want to, as an employee.
It's privacy concerns as well, especially in Europe.
Yeah. So it's
access to your photos that you make at home. Yeah,
it's a bit tricky. The second thing, and that's something you see in the enterprise more happening now, is SASE. We already discussed that a bit. Is taking control back of the network communications. So making sure that in this case the command and control traffic is going over a SASE solution, a firewall, a proxy, CASB solution, as long as it can control the network traffic.
And so conceptually, you put a huge firewall on your phone. Not really, because that's impossible. But you do this by diverting the traffic, all traffic through your big company firewall.
Yeah, it's going through this big ass firewall where you can control the traffic. And then if you know it's going to a known bad endpoint, an indicator of compromise, then you can block at least that traffic. This is something we see getting more attention in the enterprises, but it's really hard for the average user. So not for Luca, but for the average user, it's really hard to implement it
personally.
yourself.
Yeah, but for a company phone, that would help. Yeah, because you mentioned. You mentioned the command and control traffic. So that would then go through the corporate systems, and where there's for different endpoints like laptops and stuff, there is detection in place for that traffic. I mean,
this kind of dropper malware nowadays they use especially Vultur, and this one, the dropper, I think it was called Brunhilde or something like that. They are using AES encryption and base 64 encoding, so they make it a bit your life a bit more difficult. So you need to have decryption as well, probably. That makes it a bit more.
That's the same story with corporate networks. I mean, you need SSL decryption there as well.
Yeah, but still, then if you do that for your phones, controlling the network traffic, you always have to also hear the debate. Hey, this phone also has some personal apps on it, and what do you do with that traffic? Do you scan that as well? And you have the privacy concerns again.
You should have two phones at least.
Yeah, that's the maybe the easy way out.
Jason said so as well to us. That's the only way to really make it secure. Right? You already mentioned it.
Make it use a separate phone for your financial apps, or at least your delicate apps. Maybe even 3 phones, one for your company, one for yourself.
That's the problem, because I already have 2 phones. Then I will need a third.
I hope they stack together. Yeah.
I need a lot of pockets.
So currently, I think the best advice is be aware on what you install, or have separate phones.
There's Apple, for example, they have a lockdown mode on the phone that you can activate.
Make it even more strict.
Which is what I have, because the Apple, I only use it for work. I'm guilty. I use Spotify as well sometimes, but that's the only thing I have there. But I have it in lockdown mode, and I can see that it blocks quite a lot of things every time.
So how does that work?
Well, from the settings, you can enable lockdown mode, and it will do. It will set a lot of parameters, like, for example, you can't receive a video phone call from contacts that you don't have, or you can't load remote contents on the website unless you give permission, or some sort of I don't remember which protocol. But
more red tape.
What? Sorry.
More red tape on your phone.
Exactly. So then,
would you recommend to enable the lockdown mode if you for companies or persons?
Here's always the usability versus security question. If you go for security, then you should absolutely do it. If you like to install a lot of apps, try a lot of things out, then it might prevent you from some of these apps or some of these.
I've heard 0 complaints of people who enabled lockdown mode.
Me neither at the moment. So
I don't know, because I use that phone only for work. So I don't install anything. So
and you're working on your laptop anyway to hack into stuff.
I just look at the emails and.
So where were we?
We are at the point where the attacker has control over your phone, and as you can imagine, then of course with key logging systems and of course all the accessibility function, it will be easier for it.
It would be a facade app, and then you would.
It can be also. It can be, or it can intercept clicking. It can actually also bypass lockdown on the screen. So even if your screen is locked, it can still swipe or touch things and do stuff on your computer, on your phone. And then at that point, as you can imagine, it's really easy for the attacker to just get the information to get into your bank account when you use the banking app.
Yeah, because you can do the facade maybe first to maybe capture the credentials or however that's done.
I think you capture with key logging anyway, so you don't need the facade. That is more like if you want to prevent some application to start. If, for example, the victim has an anti-malware on the phone or whatever, you can just prevent it from running.
Make it appear from still running.
Facade that is running or something.
But they own the banking app, and therefore they can change stuff. For example, the destination bank account number. Is that how that works?
I guess that it's possible to intercept these kind of things, but I think it's mostly like getting your information out. For example, when I don't know, like I guess you as well, they can get information about your fingerprint as well. So all these kind of things. But also, I guess you have a passcode to do transaction or this kind of thing, so they will know the code that you need for that. They can actually maybe even push themselves further in using the app themselves. So that's how they can.
Yeah, well, if you own the device, then you own everything is on there, and apparently our money is on there.
Yeah.
Except when we split our apps, of course, on two. One more thing. From the banking perspective, I mean, as a private person, you can do the things that we mentioned, install some anti-malware stuff. Well, it's not really there yet. Well, it's starting to. Yeah. Be very vigilant, of course. Make sure you don't install from weird app stores, and in doubt, don't do it, that stuff. But from the banking perspective, you have no control on what your customers are using. So what options do they have? Yeah, so I mean, we talk to banks a lot about this.
So you have a few options, and most of them are more like common sense. And then, of course, the bank can say, okay, but setting a transferring limit. So normally you always do transfers less than €100 or dollars or 200, and then maybe you can.
They are annoying. I have to wait for 4 hours to book my holiday.
Yeah, then you maybe need to increase your limit a bit, or it's a good prevention measure.
My bank does it immediately when I request to increase the limit. There's no. I know maybe what bank you have because my girlfriend has the same problem.
Maybe we need to implement that feature in the malware that it asks for more a higher limit, and then immediately we do the. But you can of course set the thresholds and make them customizable, so they are not that annoying. It's again the usability versus security discussion. You can also, as a bank, look for a behavioral analysis. So look for a user. If every month he just pays his bills, then you have a kind of a baseline what normal behavior is. If then a few times there are some spikes or they are going above a certain threshold, then you can pay extra attention and say, contact the user. Hey, we see this behavior. Is that normal? Was it you? And if then the user says, I have no clue what this was, then probably Luca was in the system.
It's always me.
It's always you. Oh. So there are some controls, but as a bank, you cannot mandate your users to install EDR software or route the traffic.
So what about the two-factor part of this? Because those apps...
Extra verification can also help.
Yeah, my banking app on my phone, I mean, there's, of course, there's multi-factor built in. I mean, with face recognition or whatever. It could also be with a text message, the old-fashioned way, but then the same device gets it. So it doesn't feel too much multi-factor to me.
Yeah, having SMS could be tricky because then the malware could read, of course, your SMS message. But you also have banks that use third-party hardware, like a token system. Like my bank, if I have a certain amount of money above a certain threshold, then I need to give in my code, my PIN code on the device, and it will come back with a number for an extra verification.
Challenge response separate from your phone.
Separate from my phone. To make sure that I'm the one doing that transaction.
Yeah. So if you're a bank, from a bank's perspective, that's probably a measure they would want to deploy.
That you want to deploy. But if you do that every time, then you have again the discussion: usability versus security. Yeah.
So both, maybe even the banks can even do more things than a private person at this moment.
As a private person, maybe yes. Yeah.
Except from having two phones, and most people find that tricky, of course. But I mean, your second phone could be a very cheap one. It doesn't have to have to.
Of course.
And what about my watch?
What about your watch? That add an extra layer of
insecurity. Okay. I'll reconsider.
So next time we do the malware for the
Apple Watch.
Then somebody else is presenting. Okay, well, gentlemen, thank you very much for those insights. To our viewers, thank you very much for tuning in to this episode of ThreatTalks. My name is Leeuw-Jan Koning, and from the Security Operations Center floor, I thank you very much. Please like this video and subscribe to our channel if you want to see more. And if you like us, we appreciate that because it helps us spread the word further. I mentioned also that there is an infographic available about this threat. Be sure to download it and leave your comments. You can email us at team@threat-talks.com. See you next time. Thank you for listening to ThreatTalks, a podcast by Ontoit Cybersecurity and M6. Did you like what you heard? Do you want to learn more? Follow ThreatTalks to stay up to date on the topic of cybersecurity.